Hello, I'm Angeline Ong, and welcome to this edition of Beat the Street, where we give you all the tradable news ahead of the open. Coming up, we are counting down, and the Nasdaq is edging higher, getting that uplift from Microsoft. We'll have more details on that in a moment. And as investors count down to Nvidia. Also, a tech reshuffle. Speaking of Microsoft, its shares heading higher on the IG platform. All sessions after the hiring of former OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. And also, we're watching the dollar with Chris Beecham ahead of the Fed minutes and the manufacturing and services PMIs. So a very warm welcome to you to this new edition of Beat the Street. Not long now before Wall Street starts trading. This is how equity markets are looking at the moment, just giving you a shorter term view. Markets, of course, treading water there, trying to figure out what the next step is for the Fed. They're pricing out the risk of further rate increases from the Fed after the slew of weaker than expected U.S. economic indicators in the last week, showing you the Nasdaq there as well, but that we are seeing a bit of an uplift on the Nasdaq ahead of the open, thanks to Microsoft. First of all, let's join Les Dierking from Tasty Live, part of IG Group, to talk about what it all means for the markets this week and how it's going to trade, given we have Thanksgiving, given liquidity is likely to be sucked out of the market. Where are we going to see biggest moves?
Thanks for having me, and happy Thanksgiving week. This is usually an interesting week because there's going to be thinner than normal liquidity. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So hi, thank you for having me. But so normally we're going to have thinner than usual trading volumes because there are less players in the game, which can give you a bigger bid-ask spread. So because of that, some of the moves can be a little bit more exaggerated. So with the liquidity being less, the moves can be exaggerated. All eyes are going to be, and you already said it, on Nvidia this week. I mean, we also have John Deere too. So taking a look at some of these earnings that are sliding in on this low week, you might get some bigger moves. Nvidia is pricing in right now a $40 expected move up or down. So you're going to get some significant moves in the market this week.
How about right after Thanksgiving, Liz? Are there the big movers that you're kind of poised for, like retail stocks? I also hear that we're going to probably see a bumper travel season for U.S. airlines.
The airline stocks are, I mean, I think all eyes are going to be focused on those as well. I mean, natural gas is down a little bit low, and oil is kind of moving. The volatility is in the oil markets right now. So with the airlines and the oil markets should be where people are looking as well.
Great. Thanks very much, Liz. We'll be checking in with you ahead of that very quiet latter half of the week. Now, the dollar sliding to a two-month low early in the session, extending a downtrend from last week as traders reaffirm their belief that perhaps U.S. rates have peaked. Joining us now is Chris Beecham, IG Chief Market Analyst. Of course, we've got the Fed minutes. What can we expect?
Well, given the plethora of Fed speakers you've had over the past week, there's not much more those minutes can add. But I think they just confirm the Fed's view that there's a very high bar to another rate hike. And you can argue that bar's got a lot higher following that inflation data last week, the CPI, the PPI data, really sending a message that actually inflation appears to be under control. Again, we had that September-October scare with inflation spiking on the month-on-month figures, but it's returned to its declining trend, and the dollar's gone with it as well. So that's delivered quite a lot of relief, I think, for investors, which is reflected in equity markets. But for the Fed minutes, it'll be a case of, yes, we can hike again, but the message is we probably don't want to. We're content with, crucially, leaving policy unchanged. We don't want to cut rates anytime soon. We're leaving policy where it is, but even that's just enough to take the dollar further down, I think, from these highs that we've seen in September and October.
Now, many traders and market analysts and fund managers I've been speaking to are now calling perhaps a rate cut by spring, indeed in the first half. I've had some calls saying second half. What do you make of all this?
Probably the second half at the earliest. I think the risk is that in the wake of that CPI figure, everyone's just got a bit of ahead of themselves, really, and they forget the message from the Fed this year has been no, rates will stay where they are. And we will continue to leave them there until we're convinced that the inflation demon has been slain. Now it's moving in the right direction, but it hasn't come down yet to where the Fed wants it to be. And that will be accomplished through leaving rates where they are. So that, I think, while maybe Q1 and Q2 look good for equity markets, that's where the volatility will come, is where the Fed has to keep reiterating this message of, no, actually rates are staying where they are, thank you. We're quite happy where they are. And that's, I think, the risk for stocks in the short term into Q1 and Q2.
Thanks so much, Chris. The dollar index currently at 103.22 as we speak. Now, one of the key things this week too is that we're looking out for, as I mentioned earlier, Nvidia, and also we've had that news out of Microsoft, Nasdaq providing some interesting endpoints. Let's join Axel Rudolph from IG now.
I think the Nasdaq 100 looks really interesting at the moment, especially with the Zoom earnings later today and also Nvidia closing off the US earnings season more or less. And from a technical perspective as well, if you look at the Nasdaq 100, we've risen by about 12% since the late October lows. And last week, intraday at least, rose above the July high and currently are consolidating below that high. So we are still in a very strong uptrend. Short term, there's been some profit taking, which is totally normal. And we'll have to see whether after these latest results out of the US, we could then take out basically this high from last week and head towards the 16,000 mark. Because if we do so, this steep advance, yes, it may slow down in the days and weeks ahead into year end, but it is likely to continue. And that would mean that the Nasdaq 100, if I zoom out onto a weekly chart here, could actually, over the coming month, attack its highs going back to November and December of this year between around 16,660 and 16,769. So now that we've broken out of this bull flag pattern, which was formed between July and October of this year, the long-term uptrend we've seen since the end of 2022 should continue in the coming month ahead.
Now, just checking in on Microsoft at the moment because its shares did tick higher. Microsoft, of course, all sessions on the IG platform currently up around 1%. Now, all this coming after the company's chief executive announced that Sam Altman will be joining the company's AI team. Since the start of the year, its stock has gained around 60%. It comes after Altman was fired by the OpenAI board on Friday. Quite a shocking development there, given he was the mastermind behind OpenAI, and he co-founded it with Greg Brockman, who was also pushed out. It turns out that Brockman is moving over to Microsoft with Altman as well, and it's understood the board in the move, they did it because they were concerned about the company's pace of AI expansion. Meanwhile, the former boss of Twitch, Emmett Shear, has taken over the CEO role at the ChatGPT maker. And despite the changes, Microsoft CEO said the tech giant remains committed to its partnership with OpenAI. Now, of course, more details will likely leak out in the coming session and the coming days as well. And we are looking out for details as to why the board made such a drastic U-turn. Zoom Video Communications, also one we're watching because it's due to report third quarter earnings later after the market close. Now, the street expecting earnings of $1.08 a share. Revenue forecast to rise by 1.8% to just over $1 billion. With people returning to offices, Zoom has had to offer new products. It's rolled out a few AI-powered tools to compete against its rivals. And in 2024, Zoom will be entering two new markets, contact center and docs, going up against Microsoft Office and Google Docs. Just checking on Zoom's shares for you, because it's a really interesting chart to look at, because it was the darling during lockdown. But look at how it has come down since then. It's now at around the 6,440 level. And many investors are looking out to find out how the company is going to reposition itself now that the pandemic is over. The stock has remained much lower and flat in this range that we're seeing. In fact, stuck in this range since August 2022, really. It's currently, at the moment, looking on a near-term view because it's an all-session stock, up around 0.75%. Now, the key one this week is tech giant Nvidia, also linked to the AI space because it makes all these chips that systems and many companies who are hoping to drive their profits using AI need. Nvidia also an all-session stock, just showing you the chart here. It is currently up 0.75% as well, and it is reporting later too. And it will be the highlight of the holiday shortened week in the US. The AI chip leader seen delivering another blockbuster revenue forecast. However, the focus will be on whether or not widening US curbs on the sales of its high-end chips to China could hamper that run. The results will also be a major test for the AI-powered rally that's helped drive up the US stock market this year, with the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index up nearly 50% in 2023. However, the Biden administration last month banned sales of the H800 and A800 chips that Nvidia had created for and previously been selling to China. It banned the sales to China, these ships rather. And it's interesting to see when or if those bans will be lifted. China is the company's third largest market and accounts for more than 1/5 of its revenue. Nvidia says it does not expect any impact from the curbs in the near term, but its stock hit a near 5-month low in October after a report by the Wall Street Journal said that up to $5 billion in Chinese orders were in jeopardy. Now, one other thing that we are looking out for is, of course, it's a shortened week due to the countdown to Thanksgiving. Retail stocks will be in focus as well as we count down to Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And of course, later in the session, we have the traditional turkey pardoning on the South Lawn by Biden, who was last week at the APEC summit in San Francisco. Well, Brendan Ahern, CIO of Crane Shares, was there too, taking in all the mood music. And this is what he said. Take a listen.
Yeah, I think, from the Biden press conference, it was clear that, the U.S. and China are competitors, but not necessarily adversaries. They're not necessarily going to go to the prom with one another, but they got to figure out how to get along with one another. We can contrast that with President Xi's dinner that he hosted for U.S. corporate executives, including Tim Cook, Elon Musk, and others, where he clearly stated that China is open for business, that they want to make sure foreign investors, foreign corporations recognize that China is a big opportunity from a business perspective, and they're willing to work with foreign businesses to operate in China.
Now, before we go, a last look at how the market is looking, and just showing you the chart here of the Wall Street, which mirrors the Dow Jones Industrials. It does look to be a subdued open after the recent rally as investors look towards further news of the Fed's rate hike path, and also Microsoft all sessions on IG platform gaining on news that former OpenAI head Sam Altman will join the software giant. Well, that's your latest on Beat the Street, the show that follows all the trading action, helping you position yourself ahead of the opening bell. For more trading insight, do follow me on @IGCom and @Angeline on Twitter. This is IGTV.